for us. We have Dr. Debashis Chatterjee, one of the finest brains, management guru, somebody who is not only been teaching for the last 30 years, but he has been teaching to the finest students, the best universities like the Harvard Business School. He's been teaching in the IIMs like Calcutta, Ahmedabad, and now he's the director of IIM Kozhikode. The Horodhan Gardens is witnessing a talk by him on leadership. I will straight away read out an introduction from him, from his book called The Leadership Chronicles. And the format today is going to be when we are going to have some kind of interaction for half an hour or so, and then after that we will open it up for questions. So all of you can actually interact with this great mind who is amongst us. It's a great blessing, Debashis, for us to have you in Pondicherry. Professor Debashis Chatterjee has taught leadership classes at Harvard University and at the Indian Institutes of Management, IIMs of Calcutta, Lucknow and Kozhikode for nearly 3 decades. The longest serving director of a first generation IIM. He was reappointed to head IIM Kozhikode for a third 5-year term in June 2023. Professor Chatterjee has been awarded the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship twice for pre-doctoral and postdoctoral work at Harvard University. A profile author, he has published fiction and non-fiction, including Leading Consciously, Krishna, The Seventh Sense, and Timeless Leadership, which have been translated into several national and international languages. He has taught the art and practice of leadership to more than 100,000 managers globally in Fortune 500 corporations and over 50,000 school leaders. Professor Chatterjee is credited with transforming a small town B school into an institution of global recognition that is now counted amongst the top 3 IIMs in India and the top 75 management schools worldwide, according to the Financial Times rankings. This is the background of somebody who is amongst us today. Debashis, tell us something about what prompted you to write this book.
Thank you, Lalit, for putting together what looks like a modest audience here, which is perfectly okay, of people much better than me in accomplishment in their spiritual journey. So I'm honored. You and your wife Sharnaz and both of you have put this together. Virtually no notice at all. I was swinging from Mahabalipuram to, it's like I have to compete with the raving lorry, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're not switching onto your smartphone, I'm okay. So if it is possible to put this together in such a short notice, it's possible for you to do many more things. I appreciate you calling me here. You asked me to talk about the title of the book, right?
Yes.
Is Globalizing Indian Thought. Now, before we even talk about that, our biggest challenge in the IIM system was to Indianize Indian thought, because Indian thought is not Indian. So we asked a very simple rhetorical question. The question was, what is Indian about the Indian Institute of Management? And the answer to that question was very little. When I came to the institutional space in IIM Calcutta, I began to realize that this is an import that's been sort of put on Indian minds and hearts in ways that it doesn't fit in. So when I came to IIM Kozhikode as director, I was asked by Mr. Sridharan, the Metro Man of India, you're aware of who he is. He asked me a question. He said, if you wanted to argue that you're too young to be given the role of the leadership of an IIM. Now, I was all of 43 years old, not that young. But the convention is 55 and above, generally in those days. I'm talking about 2009. A lot of young people have become. They said, you don't really give leadership, you only give a position. If you're confusing position with leadership, that's another story. So I walked into the campus and I saw the path to the main building was called Harvard Steps. And our curriculum was largely dominated by Harvard case studies. So Harvard is doing a case study on Shankar Nitralaya and selling back the material to me. And I spend about ₹500 crore buying Harvard case studies. And I teach students. So I said, is the goal to be a third-rate Harvard or a first-rate IIM? And the answer was obvious. We wanted to be a first-rate IIM. So where do we start the whole process? We said, is it possible for us to recognize that we should have instrumental music in our corridors? He said, what does music got to do with management? I said, if you don't perform in management, you have to face the music. So you might as well begin to recognize that. But more importantly, your heartbeat is musical, your DNA is musical, your entire biorhythms are musical. And if you don't understand that management is about rhythm, not about production, then you will make the distinction between music that you hear outside and the music that is already inherent in the way we are, right? And so Globalizing Indian Thought started with a vision. It was called 2047. I produced a coffee table book called 2047 in the year 2013 and distributed to all the chief ministers of the country, the chief justice and justices. And I got very prompt response from two chief ministers. One was Mamata Banerjee from Bengal, the other was Narendra Modi from Gujarat. The first one offered me a job as Vice Chancellor. Thank God I didn't accept the job. I would be in jail today if I did. And the second one offered, very inspiring advice with a quote from Swami Vivekananda at the end. The second man, when he became Prime Minister of India, he got to his cabinet meeting and he said, look, there's this crazy guy in Kozhikode who had sent me a book. Must have said something to that effect. I was not privy to the conversation, but I just heard this. So this Secretary, Ministry of Education says to me, can you produce a report for India in 2047? I said, I can, but it will cost you money because I don't do it free here. So the money came from the government department and we produced a report where we actually interviewed 30,000 school children, school principals through the internet. And we asked them questions around what would be your vision for India? What do you want to see in 2047? Many of them said that we will not be citizens of one country, we will be citizens of multiple countries. And many of them would be virtual countries. And music would be multi-dimensional, so music will play to my moods. So I promptly named all my hostels in the name of ragas. L. Subramaniam, who was a violinist who came to my campus and said, look, I have been to music colleges, but I haven't seen hostels named after music, of ragas. And so we began to understand that if we could solve some of India's problems through our technological and management prowess, we could globalize, we could scale up those solutions. So what's true of India will be true of Brazil, true of 80% of this planet. So why not evolve our own solutions, our own idiom, our own vocabulary, our own way of looking at the world, which is very powerful, rather than get colonized by a system that doesn't fit in, honestly. I mean, they may have great run, but it doesn't fit in. If you look at the models that we were supposed to hang on to are not working anymore. They are non-sustainable. All businesses are designed for non-sustainability. Do you see this? And therefore they have to look at sustainable practices. Why do you have to talk about corruption? Because we can't do much about it. Why are you talking about pollution? Because you can't do anything about it. That's why you're talking about it. So such sustainability has come about because this world order is not sustainable in the way it is. So we have to go back to our rishis, to our great minds, and to see what they had to say. And what they have to say is a lot of stuff, which I don't want to go on right now. But I've given you a snapshot of why this book was written. So I chronicled what I did in my 3 terms in IIM Kozhikode. This is the 3rd term. And that is hopefully going to be of relevance to people who want to build institutions, teaching schools, and organizations based on this extraordinary set of values that we've actually enshrined in our way of life.
Debashis, what are the fundamental differences between an Indian thought and a Western thought frames?
See, if you ask me, I'll look at 3 distinctions, very clear. One is the ability of the Indian mind to jump from the linear to the non-linear, intuitive. Is very evident. You look at any Indian movie, in the middle of a car chase or a court scene, the hero and the heroine starts dancing. And you will not find it in a Western. Of course, Western musicals are different, but in a movie, you wouldn't find that at all. Why is that so? Because the ability to grasp that intuition and analysis coexist. There are two different frames of looking at the same reality. Indian mind is far more capable of doing that. So that's one dimension. The other dimension is flexibility of response. You know, there was a time we grew up in Calcutta whereas in the rest of the world you drove either on the right or the left. In Calcutta you drove on whatever was left. And the result was that you developed acute awareness of things around you, and therefore you recognize that an Indian grocer can do multimodally a lot of things which the Western mind is baffled by. This flexibility of response means that there is a creative element within us that can look at a solution to a problem in multiple ways. The third dimension is the coexistence of what you call buddhi vritti and hridaya vritti. What is buddhi vritti? The culture of the intellect. What is hridaya vritti? The culture of the heart. So when a student comes to my class and he hasn't done the case studies, hair is ruffled, you look at him and you say, have you had breakfast? That is hridaya vritti. If I told him, did you do your homework? Why haven't you not studied the case studies that was given to you? That would be buddhi vritti. But we can do both. We can nuance. See, there's a generosity, there's a kindness in the air. You check into a Marriott hotel in New York, nobody picks up your bag. Irrespective of what age you are, when you call somebody or pay somebody. But here the response is almost automatic. So these are the three distinctions that I would say that one civilization has grew a human-centered universe based on human response. The other universe was system-centered, where human beings were largely a cog in the system. And so you had to obey, which means that they had controlled outer nature so beautifully. The systems would run, but the human beings would be subservient to the system. And that's what India sort of has altered, and for the right reason, because you have to understand that the truth of everything lies within the human constitution, not in the innate system. So Indians are smarter. Much Tagore's wonderful words, "Sabar upore manushotto, tahar upore nai," which means above everything else, there is this humanness. Means nothing about that. Nothing about that. The Western world, which has debunked the great man theory after Hitler, would not talk about a hero anymore. They haven't produced a Buddha, they haven't produced a Krishna. They have produced scientists, technocrats, people who could decode systems, unravel systems. And so, India's contribution has been of a very different dimension. I hope you're enjoying it. I can't see most of you in the dark, but I hope it is okay.
Yes, yeah.
No, good, we are enjoying. Go ahead.
You are? Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, Debashis, you've had a multidisciplinary education, JNU,
Yeah.
Film and Television Institute, IIM, and Harvard University. What did these schools teach you?
I have to recall JNU, you know, those days you got into JNU and you used to hear some refrain, because UPSC, IS used to be the very rational, a bunch of students would do that. And so you used to hear there are three superpowers in the world, USA, USSR and Bihar. Because these Biharis would have the fortitude to be able to crack an exam by due diligence. And I would see that for every person who from Bihar or anywhere else for that matter, who had crossed the prelims, there would be potential suitors, marriage proposals. And I have seen gunmen and potential father-in-laws hanging around the hostel gates to be able to see that, you know. So the obsessive, this contrary to what people talk about JNU, and it has a core of material, but there was another aspect of the JNU culture, which was very liberal, that would look worldwide, and things have changed now, but JNU had taught me that you could come from a small town of India and you could crave for a life of aspiration. I was told when I got in that, you know, if you come from a small town like I did from Bardhaman, he said you get affirmative action points, which simply means that I was transferred to JNU because professors had evolved a mechanism If it's from a small town, he may not have had the privilege of cosmopolitan education, so he gets a better option. That was JNU's teaching from the Film Institute in Pune. See, my teachers were Debashis Chatterjee, Nasruddin Shah, Sham Ganigal, Govind Nyalini. These are our teachers. And you could see that why they have such a huge impact on Indian masses, because they can convince you in 2 hours' time that what they're saying is believable, is credible. What you call suspension of disbelief. You look at the nuances of how they carry out and act. And more importantly, you understood from the film world that for a leader, it was very essential to be able to hold on to a point of view. Because cinema is about points of view. So if you could, if you're a Kurosawa or Satyajit Ray, could actually take you to that point of view through their craft. And you understood the power of narrative. Unlike in the IITs, you don't know any narrative, you just know functionality. But the Film Institute taught me the power of narrative. IIM was, as usual, imagine that beeline for placements and very little Indian about Indian Institute of Management. And Harvard was the antithesis of whatever I learned in India. And so I survived little bits in each of these institutional spaces. But when I came back, I recognized that it was essential to go through the whole journey of doing things that were very disconnected from your reality to understand what is the missing piece. And that was very important for me. So I recognized that I was living a superimposed life, literally. Whereas my heart was in something, but my mind was going in one direction. So to be able to study the Upanishads, the literature of the Rishis, Vedantic wisdom, and of course mystics like Kabir and Rumi, and somebody like Rumi could only say that you are not in the world is in you, and you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in the drop. Now imagine the world that you get. And immediately, everything that you studied there gets challenged, gets questioned. So that was the journey.
The book is written in the subjective first person, singular narrative. Why is that?
I was reluctant to write about myself. Supposed to be a memoir. Penguin told me that's high time you wrote it. I said, I can't do that. So he said, no, at least it should be first person singular. I said, okay. So I rewrote the whole book. It was actually 360-degree feedback on my work, from objective feedback from people which was put together. But then I said, okay, I'll put this in a narrative format. While doing that, I recognized something very important. That all our decisions are subjective in the ultimate analysis. Our claims to objectivity is merely a false assumption. In the corporate world that I inhabit most of the time, there is something called performance appraisal formula. So you have analytical skill, you have leadership skill, you have communication skills, and then you're supposed to tick on a 4-point scale, 5-point scale, and you're supposed to add up and give a promotion. So I asked HR heads of companies, do you really do that, or do you really decide whom to promote first and then fill up those forms? And the answer was, obviously they first decide whom to promote first. So I'm just saying, what was the trouble of so much of analysis that you took? It goes to a knot. And so the ability to recognize that every experience is ultimately subjective. However, your claims to even the greatest of scientists will influence the process of discovery. The mind of the scientist cannot be objectified in the way we claim it is. So the point is this, that there's nothing really called a perfectly objective state. Anywhere you go. So you split an atom, you see the atom is merely a story. It is not even a substance. Who has seen protons and neutrons? Of course, we see protons, neutrons if it's blown up. And we also see morons, which are not protons and neutrons. But the fact is, corporations will deal with morons will behave exactly opposite to the law. So we see protons and neutrons, and do we see them or do we hear their stories? Then another scientist tells, it's not protons and neutrons, there's subatomic particles, and let's name them. So there's another story. And then there's another story. So this whole thing goes down to a point where you recognize that everything we call out as reality is stories told. by minds that claims to be objective but they aren't. And we are beginning to sense that how true these rishis were when they said that, there is only IIM, the ultimate subjective, and there is nothing else. And so, it is difficult to disbelieve what they said based on what we are sensing. They told us, figure out, if you want to know yourself, figure out who you are not. And that's the only thing you can figure out, not who you are. And so this is so important for me too. So when I wrote something in the first person singular, I said, am I making claims about myself which are not true? A simple thing like I flew 2,000 miles to get here. I said, did you fly or the plane flew? Well, I'm a self-made billionaire. How stupid that is. Where are the billions before it came to you? Where were they? Now, all these claims that you make, you will see there's a facade of falsity. So when you start removing those falsities around, you're left with, so for instance, if you look at my trousers got crafted somewhere abroad, my shirt got done in Mirat, my glasses got made in China, my software called my brain is the accumulated gift of my parents, my students, my children, and my voice is that voice that my father had, and if all of them were taken away from me, then I would be reduced to nothing, including my own voice. It will not function anymore. So I will say, even with a full microphone, I will say something like, you'll be reduced to nullity, devoid of all these contributions. And so if that dawns on me, not as a thought, not just conceptually, but actually, then the words of the rishis starts making sense. Doesn't it? Thank you.
We are in the impression that leaders only lead. Good leaders are also, they know how to follow. Can you elaborate on that?
Can you have a leader without a follower in the first place? You can have a manager has employees, but leaders have to have a follower. And your first follower identifies those gunas that make you leader. Guna has two words, the word gun. In Bengali it's called gun, and it has two dimensions. One gun is called quality of the head and the heart, and gun is also a multiplier. So those qualities multiply, not the person. So we are assuming that one leader has got so many followers, but fundamentally what the leader is following is a gun. Leader is also following, except the leader is following a gun, and his followers or her followers identify that gun and say, okay, if Krishna is about playfulness, if Buddha is about intelligence, then I would like to imbibe those two qualities in me. And so I imbibe those qualities and I say, oh, they multiply, which means a lot of other people are looking for it as well. So unless you know how to follow, you can't be a leader. Swami Vivekananda's famous words, dasasya das. Dasasya das means I'm the servant of servants. Servant of what? Servant of that presence which has got all the gunas that you can imagine. So when you become a servant of that, you start leading because, people want to know who you are following because you're following something so powerful. So out of curiosity, they'll say, what explains this kind of enormous magnetism, enormous capability of making so many mobilizing so much of human energy in the system? What is that goal? What is this that you're following? So followership is the critical starting point of leadership. Just as listening is the starting point of communication, followership is the starting point of leadership. You can't be a father unless your son is born. Your son doesn't know that he has become a son, but you know you have become a father. Only relationship to the one who's going to follow you. And so the point is that this leader-follower relationship tells us leadership is not just an object or an objectified person. Leadership is a process of unfolding of something that is deeply inherent in you. These gunas, it's called Sat, Chit, Ananda, whatever. See, this unfoldment of something that is deeply innate to you and to others. Once you know how to unveil that, people start following you for no rhyme or reason, without wagging a finger, without uttering a word. You see people following you. I've seen such people in my life, so I can say with certainty that there's something in the air that makes people follow you. Yeah.
Debashis, last time when you had given a small interaction at the governor's house when Dr. Kiran Bedi was here, I remember you had defined some qualities of leadership which have got embedded in my consciousness. There are two things that I remember. Of course, a leader has many, many qualities, but the two highlights which really were different. One was that a leader has to be a Raja and a Rishi. Raj Rishi, the concept of Raj Rishi, and I think in your book that is spoken several times. And the other thing I remember was that a real leader has consistency of values. It really struck me, if you can elaborate on that.
The first is, it's a very old idea. Sage King is nothing great new about it, but the understanding of it may be somewhat novel. So if you look at what Rajarshi actually means, it actually means the software and the hardware of leadership. Raja represents that consciousness which is dynamic, which is able to produce results, which is conditioned to produce results. That's Raja. And Rishi is reflective, that which is not conditioned, that which is free. And therefore it can see where the results are going, it can guide the results from the path of desire to the path of the desirable, from the prayer to the Shreya. Prayer is what is pleasing, Shreya is what is desired, what is may not be pleasing to start with, but it is desired. So the ability to guide action in the right frame is Rishi. And Rishi's consciousness is not conditioned like the Rajas, because Raja has to deliver results. So the moment you act, your consciousness is conditioned by the action, right? But before your action comes, there is a reflection. That how much to act, where to act. That is a function of reflection. So if you look at these four icons of the world, action-oriented Rajas, you look at an Arjun, you look at Alexander, you look at Chandragupta Maurya, they're Rajas. But without a Krishna, where is Arjun? Without an Aristotle, where is Alexander? Without a Chanakya, where is Chandragupta? So they form what you might call complementary relationship. One without the other doesn't work. These are dimensions of nature that work in tandem. Just as your biceps and triceps work in tandem. You want to strengthen your biceps, your triceps will relax. You want to strengthen your triceps, your biceps will have to relax. So they work in tandem. And Raja Rishi, this is the problem. We have too many Rajas. And America has a lot of Rajas. The idea of Rishi is almost unknown. If you look at the great American thinkers, they are not even heard by an American population. They don't know who Emerson is. They don't know who Thoreau is. But at least we know our Vivekanandas, we know our Sri Aurobindos, and we know them because this is part of our cultural heritage. But America doesn't know that there is a transcendental vision of these people who borrowed those ideas, of course, from the East. But nobody knows them because that's not fashionable to be a Rishi sitting there. So how much do you make will be the first question. If you say, I make nothing, I sit there, I say, oh, lazy bum, you don't have to do much. So, okay, don't bother. So the point I'm trying to make is that we are conditioned in a certain way. That conditioning is necessary because you must follow traffic rules, you must deliver results. Absolutely necessary. But if this conditioning goes against the grain of reality or truth, then you need a Rishi to tell you that, oh, this is not going to work going forward. Or you must work differently. You must act differently. The Rishi brings that. And the culture of Rishihood is prevalent in India. So every time there's a conch shell blowing, you go and sit quietly, which means you take your awareness from the outside, you go to the reflective space 3 times, 4 times a day. And that is inbuilt in our culture. That's part of the Rishi culture, is inherent in the way we are. But it's not there anywhere else. Right? So TGIF, thank God it's Friday, right? In Japan, after Friday, the Japanese are very different from the Japan that you see. Tokyo, I was surprised that in a country like Japan, completely westernized, it's lost its core completely. So that's what it is. That's what I was trying to explain. Raja, Rishi are complementary capabilities in the human constitution, in the human space, and we have discovered both of them in their own space.
Debashis, the laws of the matter and the laws of the spirit,
Yeah.
how do they coexist?
Interesting. Matter does not matter at all without spirit. If somebody offers you a cup of tea in a very disdainful way, as though you're a beggar, would that cup of tea matter whether this is Darjeeling tea or you feel very bad? You'll not even drink that cup of tea because of the spirit in which it was served. So this matter-spirit dilemma, matter versus spirit, is a typical Western construct. It has nothing to do with how sages, the pure sages of India looked at. They didn't look at matter as alien to spirit. Those who did not do great service to India. Those who did not, they found out a way that there's a reconciliation. So Indian rishis looked at the law of causation. This is the entire summary of law of cause and effect in the Vedanta. They said wherever there is an effect in matter and spirit terms, wherever there is an effect, there must be a cause. Wherever there is smoke, there must be fire. Very simple. So please look for the cause if you want to solve a problem. The second law of causation was, one cause, if it's powerful enough, can produce a million effects. One seed can produce a whole forest. So find out what could be the most powerful cause behind all effects. This is the second law of causation. The third law of causation was, if you take away the cause, nothing of the effect remains. Waves are effect on an ocean. If you take the ocean away, where are the waves? So they said, this notion of Ishvara, which is the actual definition of what the Western classifies as God. Ishvara is not really God. If you break the word Ishvara, Ish means king, Vara means nature. Somebody who rules nature. Cause-effect relationship nature. So if your newly bought car stands behind a jackfruit tree and the jackfruit is ripe enough, it's going to fall on the car, following law of gravity. Even if you're a Shankaracharya, the jackfruit will fall on the car and make a dent in the car. Jackfruit will obey the law of gravity and the car will resist, there will be a dent in the car, invariably. Or if your car meets with another car and causes an accident, you can't say, oh, it's in my bhagya mein likha hai, it's luck. You're breaking the law of physics, which says two cars cannot stay in the same place at the same time. So this is an accident. You're violating a law of physics. So the ancients said these laws operate. However, there is one place where you cannot separate cause and effect. Cause and effect, when separated, becomes matter. But when cause and effect becomes one, then it becomes spirit. You do not know what is the cause, you know there is omnipresence, omnipotence. So Ishvara is efficient cause as well as the material cause of the universe. And Ishvara doesn't mean that Ishvara functions with laws and rules and regulations. The regulations are Ishvaras, the matter is Ishvara. So I worship the Saraswati before I start because I am worshipping Ishvara, the Saraswati. I touch the feet of my parents because I am worshipping Ishvara through my parents. I worship Lakshmi before greeting wealth because I am actually looking at the ultimate cause of a relationship, where the cause will produce the effect, but they cannot be distinguished. That's what when it becomes spirit. When it becomes, so the matter is nothing but spirit visible in such extent that you can separate cause from effect. Spirit is where you cannot separate it. That's the relationship with matter and spirit. So you ask me, how is this dichotomy going to play out in your life? So before you start anything, go to the root cause, you see, without which everything is meaningless. Go to the ocean rather than the wave and figure out if the ocean is producing the wave or wave is producing the ocean. Very often they're not within ocean, wave is the tail is wagging the dog. That's the Western import. I am doing this work, and the ancient cities say, please give up doership. You will know that you are not doing the work. There is an assumption that you are doing the work. Work is getting done through your nature. And there is nobody who's sitting there as a central commander doing your work. There's only a figment of your imagination. There's only a ego shadow of reality, which is not even substance, it is just shadow. And you're thinking that shadow is you. Are you with me?
Yes.
And so to be able to understand Vedanta in the light of the wisdom, the spirit of science, the spirit of objectivity, if that is what you want, then you can see how powerfully the rishis have argued and have explained what constitutes the structure of reality, how to be in this reality, how to be efficient, how to be successful, how to be happy. They've given us all the solutions. Unfortunately, we haven't listened for a long time.
You know, it reminds me of one sentence from Sri Aurobindo. It says, "In matter shall be lit, the spirits glow." What is the role of consciousness in leadership?
Very important question. Thing is, the moment you say consciousness, it almost seems like esoteric. It is not. I am conscious of my toothache. So what you call consciousness, translate loosely as chetana. Because there is consciousness, devoid of consciousness there is no life. So chetana is conditioning of something which the masters call chaitanya. Chaitanya is the principle behind you becoming conscious. So if I put lipstick on a dead body, which has no chetana, it makes sense, it's just a dead body. But if there is chetana, the dead body comes alive. It comes alive because of a principle behind chetana. That principle is called chaitanya. So when you talk of consciousness, you must be very clear. Are you talking about chetana or are you talking about chaitanya? Chaitanya can be classified as awareness rather than consciousness. So I'm aware that I'm conscious. I'm aware that I'm unconscious. I was angry with somebody in the morning and I become conscious of that in the evening. But I was aware that I was angry beyond the proportion. That awareness is like this black box, which is Chaitanya. And when I become aware of something in my frame of in my mind, in my body, I become conscious of. So awareness is not a personal thing. Awareness is everywhere. When sunflowers look at the sun, you say there's a principle because sunflowers are phototropic or whatever the term is. But there's another thing. When sunflowers are not getting sun enough, when there's a clouded sky, sunflowers will look at each other because they're sharing something. So where does this awareness come from? They've not been taught by anybody. So there is an instinctive nature in which everything plays out. Animals use their instinct, we use our consciousness, we use our thinking. Doesn't matter what you use. When you look at a spider's web, textile engineering of the highest order, a beehive, which knows how to keep its temperature to certain so the wax doesn't melt. The extraordinary instinct of the bee and the spider is because they are already aware of what to do. As a species they may not be aware, but they are doing things in the field of awareness. And this is Chaitanya Maya Prithvi, and this is a universe that is aware of itself. It is not the universe that is aware of itself, it is awareness that is aware of itself. And the universe appears and disappears in this awareness. So has the master said. I was just an ordinary person, I'm not saying that. I'm aware of the universe dissolving. But the masters have said that the universe rises and dissolves in this. Awareness remains. Like the white screen on which the movie is played out, the screen doesn't become colorful. The screen has no bloodshed, no violence. The movie may be violent. The screen is pristine, it is aware, unpolluted. That's what they're talking about.
We'll now open up with two more questions to him. We'll open up the questions to the audience so that you also get a chance to ask. But the title of today's talk was My Experiences with the Globalization of Indian Thought. And that takes me to asking you a question. Globalization, does it start from a point and spreads all over, or does a thought or a principle simply finds its time to be recognized in the world simultaneously?
if you look at globalization and the internet, how did the internet come into being? How did the Berlin Wall come down? You'll see this is like a thought that is evolving from the human context, from a shared consciousness of something that spreads far and wide. So I asked a German couple, there's a doctor couple, and they gave me a piece of the wall. And I said, which wall is this? This is the Berlin Wall. And one side of the rock was small holes, and the other side was some colorful graffiti. So they said, the one with the hole is the East German side, the one with graffiti is the West German side. When they tried to climb the East German, they were shot down, some of them. So this is. I said, how did the Berlin Wall come down? I said, through conversations, not because of precise political plans. So this is shared meaning, shared value. Internet is an example of that. This is called Abuddha in our classical. We'll call it Abuddha, which means something that is already in you as a possibility, and you are seeing that unfold in a shared consciousness. And there's another kind of globalization, which is, the rishis have said, Aham Brahmasmi. I am the universe, I am whatever, I am Brahma. Now you and I can't figure that out. And how do I know that I am Brahma? It says then you have to evolve to a point where you will see your global proportions. This is called Nishtesha. Nishtesha means the one that you getting the essence of who you are, because you are the universe. But for that, it's not about shared consciousness. It is not shared as the internet is shared. It is shared as a latent, as something that you have to evolve towards. And there are methods for evolution. That is another kind of globalization. So whether it comes down or it goes up, ultimately you are talking about that which a large number of people are able to access either through a shared consciousness or through an evolved consciousness of one individual who then can inspire a million others to say, oh hey, here is something that you must come and see. That you are the universe, come and see, I've seen it, I'm inviting you to come and have a look. So Rumi says, I am not the wave in the ocean, I am the ocean in the wave. I'm in the drop, I am the ocean. Now who would believe him? Until you are Rumi yourself. The Vivekananda had to say, only Vivekananda will know what he had seen and achieved. But that is also of proportion. So Abuddha and Nishesha were the two dimensions that the Gita clearly mentions as that you are that. You can access this through a shared consciousness, or you can access this by evolving your response to the world. That's what it means to me, globalization, that's what it means.
Would any one of you like to ask a question, a witty question, which means very short, so that we can listen to his answer more than a long question? So please feel free. Tambi? Mike.
If chairs could ask questions, there will be a lot of questions from the chairs. Okay, please, sir, go ahead. Please let us know who you are, because I need to know, because there's so many.
My name is Mananathan.
1 second, he'll give you the mic.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Go ahead.
My name is Mananathan. I head a group of companies in Pondicherry. And we are exporting our products from Pondicherry to 70 plus countries.
Wonderful.
And we have also patented international patents of many products.
Sure.
And management by chance, I am practicing. Okay, I'm not teaching, I am practicing. Fine. When I saw the topic of globalization of Indian thoughts, I came here to learn more about Indian economy and global economy and so on and so forth. But what went is maybe because of Lalit and sitting in a very spiritual place. I was telling her this is a very, very spiritual place because a lot of spiritual things happen in this particular small place. Then the topic went towards more of spiritual globalization rather than economy globalization. Still, you being a management guru and after seeing your profile, I think it is worth to ask a question. See, today we are a 3.3 trillion economy, and China is around 17 trillion, and the US is 25 trillion economy. And China could achieve this within 15 years, from nowhere to somewhere, 17 trillion economy. And in spite of all our credentials, background, management capabilities, intelligence of Indians and all, we are still at 3.3 trillion economy. Does it mean we lack certain leadership compared to the other country? That's my question. Because the topic is leadership, do we lack some leadership? Because somebody has done it, somebody has achieved it. But we are setting a goal by 2049, not even at 17 trillion, only at 10 trillion.
Are you seriously asking a question, or you already made up your mind? If you haven't, then you can listen to what I'm saying. Please be a little patient. Look at the evolution of the Chinese economy and look at where the curve is going. You know, you must have 100 years horizon before you come to judgments about economies. You know, you can't come to judgment about Roman Empire based on Rome's best days. Where is Roman Empire? Nowhere. Nobody goes to Italy. It's a third world country. Our students go there, toilets are much worse. So please understand that India and China were not two different countries in the first place. Geographically, we had racial, but there was a time when Indian thought, like a swing door, went to China, Chinese thought came to India, a lot of stuff we used. So it was a seamless, so Dhyan becomes Chan in China, it becomes Zen in Japan. So there was seamless exchange of ideas. All of a sudden, the Chinese economy liberalized and they grew at breakneck speed, and credit should go to their leadership that could coerce people into being part of the production line. If you buy an agarbatti or a diya in India, you will see sometimes secret messages where a prisoner in China, bonded labor, who's produced that piece of thing, who is not getting the benefit of that, at the marginal cost, the cost that is involved is much less because you're using a bonded labor to produce that product, which is fine. I mean, saying Chinese economy is growing, it is evidence-based, I would not argue with you there. I will just look at 50 years horizon and look at projections that are happening in India's economy versus China's economy. And the projection makes it very clear that the momentum that China has achieved, if you look at now, current momentum is not what you said. You're giving me data from the past. If you look at the next 15 years projections, China's biggest struggle would be to maintain its status quo through military might, not so much economic might. What is China doing? Establishing its empire. And this is something that will happen because when you are losing your ability to produce those goods and services at a cost, performance point, where others are producing. So Vietnam is doing better than China, Bangladesh is doing better than China. Because China has become affluent and they are not getting the kind of traction based on the population demographic dividend they had. So if you look at 50 years of horizon of Chinese progress versus India's progress, I would say with a certain degree of objectivity that India's played the game much better. We have slowed each other down. Like Kumbh Mela, you know, you have 12, every 10 years or 12 years it happens. Everybody gets to have a dip and they slow each other down because you can't hurry and take a dip and shove away the person who cannot because you're rushing too fast. So I grant you that, you know, there must be something lacking in Indian spirit, and that lack is not in terms of potential, not in terms of Indian genius. It is only in terms of a worldview. India cannot converge like China will. India will not be a convergent country, ever. China can whip and say everybody has to follow. So nobody knew how many Chinese soldiers got killed in the skirmish, but everybody knew what happened to those Indians. The point I'm trying to make is this, that economy does not play out independent of the process through which you lead the economy. I was in Shanghai, and I was in Shanghai Fair. I've paid my dues to China. I've seen what Chinese life is all about. Extremely good, you know, hotels spotlessly clean, roads are nice. I come to the airport, somebody steals my smartphone, and they said, you know, it's the stealth is, you know, is commonplace here. I couldn't get back my phone. I don't think it'll happen so much in an Indian airport. But the fact is that there is a shadow. Look at what happened during COVID in China. If you've seen those images how COVID was tackled. So the point is the process that you follow to grow the economy very quickly, those processes, are they sustainable or they're not sustainable in a 50 years horizon? If they're not sustainable, if the population policy of China is not sustainable, they're trying to have more children. So what was the point of having that policy in the first place? You get my point? I'm not saying India is infinitely better than China in everything. No, we are not. We are not. There are lots of things to learn from China. But please do not run down a leadership of a country based just on evidence that are purely anecdotal, purely economic or commercial, because there's a much larger force at work, much larger voice at work. And that you have to understand. In the 100-year horizon, 2047, you see, Ministry of Education gave me a project to look at the 5 top soft powers in the world in 2047. There's no place for China there. Why? Because it is going to have a diminishing return in soft power assets. Power is not just economic power. Power is multiple, not just military power. If it was that, then Vietnam would not be able to resist American warfare. If that was just that. So there are many dimensions of power that you have to look at. I'm sorry that this conversation went a little spiritual, but what is matter without spirit? I mean, who are you without the spirit? I'm just asking that question. And this is how it was meant to be, so it happened that way. I have no apologies for it. I don't know if I've answered Sir's question, but nevertheless. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Hello sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, my name is Bhupinder,
Yes.
and professionally I'm working with Wipro Technologies,
Yeah.
and I'm IIK alumni. I did masters in artificial intelligence.
Right. So tell us your question.
Yeah. So again, it's not a question; it's just a thought on globalizing thought. So,
Right.
so I think I heard Mr. Lalitji also talking about Western and Indian management of thoughts. So let's look at management first. So we were trying to interchangeably talking about management of India or Western. Overall, I don't see any difference. Management is management. Same goes on thought also. So Western
Right.
thought is
Right.
Indian thought is same. So
Right.
now on the thoughts, what we basically talking, globalizing. So overall, if I look at from a perspective of professional work, what I've done, 17 years of experience in different MNCs. So it's not about thought what we distinguish. So majorly, if I have to talk on realistic mode, it's actually the cost effectiveness, and that's the reason our thoughts are getting sold in different places. So if you feel that if cost was not a factor there, do you feel that our thoughts are too global to sell it so openly?
No. See, the thing is, any management has two components. One is systems, processes. See, our systems processes are largely borrowed and they're common across the spectrum. Structure, systems, processes, job description, the way we do things. What we do in America will be a minor variation in India, minor variation in China. More or less the same. System processes are best practices, cost performance ratios. These are across the board. They have to be, because these are universal laws of matter, right? You can't take away, if you have to run a business, you have to look at cost, you have to look at profitability. But there are people who run those businesses, unfortunately. Robots do not run businesses. So if you have Jack Ma and J.R.D. Tata, if you have Jack Welch and J.R.D. Tata, let's look at people who are running these businesses. They would be constrained by their cultures, by their ethos, by their country of origin, to do things differently from their counterparts. If you tell me J.R.D. Tata would behave the same way as Jack Welch running his business, that's not going to happen. Yeah, in terms of structures, processes, best practices, they might. But when it comes to dealing with people, there will be a cultural. See, our structures are global, but our cultures are local. And you have to decode culture. This is very important when you are in business. There's before 1850s, if you look at photographs of people, nobody smiled in those photographs. You wonder, why are they not smiling? Is it because they have bad teeth? That could be one reason. But there was a research going on and people researched them and they figured out smiling was considered low class activity. So people would not smile because they would be thought of as low class. So there would be cultural differences from one country to another, one culture to another. And those cultural differences will play out. The systems will work based on because cultures are so powerful. There's this great American person who says, a culture eats strategy for breakfast. Strategy is universal, but culture will swallow strategy. So America gave us a washing machine. In Punjab, they're using a washing machine as lassi maker. No, I'm going to use any device based on the culture I have, right? And so culture will take the system for a ride if you have not understood culture. But there's another dimension which is more important than culture, which is innovation. Strategy will be eaten by culture for breakfast, but innovation will eat culture for dinner. Great innovations will change cultures in ways that, so Indian culture is changing, it's not a static culture. Indian corporate culture is becoming cost efficient. We are competing with the world. पहले क्या था कि आप जैसा successful businessman, you create a national brand called Rasna, Limca. And then you say, I can't grow up anymore, let me sell it off to Pepsi or Coke. I am scared because my mind is colonized. I can't think of growing as big as that. Right? You have Hotmail, Sabir Bhatia. He quickly sells off as quickly as possible. Because कलीजा भी चाहिए ना कल्चर में. Colonized हो गया तो वो कैसे the India of today.
In fact, that is not the reply I expected for the previous.
No, you expect, but it will come ना थोड़ी जोर का झटका धीरे से लगता
For
है.
my previous question, this is the answer.
No, that's
The
exactly
attitude.
great. Good that you pointed out. So what we are saying is it possible to see that I can be as good as an American company, provided I follow A, B, C, D. So people will follow A, B, C, D because the results they will get. So culture will shift because there will be innovation. Organizations will innovate. And so culture is not a static thing. It changes. It changes. There was a time when Lodhis owned the whole of India because they had elephants, because he thought nobody can defeat the elephants. And Babur came from Central Asia, ran over the elephants, conquered India. Because horses were swifter than elephants. Then the British came with their gunpowder. And they had all the horses and elephants out, British conquered after Mughals. And then they encountered another person whose name is Gandhi and the other liberation movement, Aurobindo, Vivekananda, everybody. And the British didn't know there was something called soul power. Satyagraha. Soul power. They had no inkling that such a power existed. So culture shifted as we innovated, and when we innovated, we experienced deeper nuances of our culture. So India of tomorrow will be like India that was the best in the world once upon a time. You study Nalanda and Takshashila. The culture was, absolutely classes will start on time. Professors will not be late. Students will get exercise, wholesome. Look at the culture of Nalanda, Takshashila. Look, any Western model will be surprised that we had such a thing. We actually had such a thing. So what you call culture is a dynamic interplay of forces that impact the culture, innovation that comes as a result. And what China is doing today, India can do better because China's innovation, I was in Singapore, I lived in Singapore for a long time. Singapore is investing hugely on creativity because that's gone for a toss. So if there's a movie made in Singapore, the movie will end in with the following line, please follow the law. That's the end of the film. So that is what is called aesthetic. So a country grows in one dimension, it loses in others. So there is a change. What is China has done today? China is opening up to a lot of things. Now I met BK Iyengar. He said my thing is very successful in China because they want to adopt yoga. Everybody wants to do yoga there. So he has a huge audience. Why would they want to do yoga? They want to get in good shape, which is sustainable. So cultures export their traditions, their history, and we assimilate, we grow. So what you call Indian culture today, for instance, Chile is not Indian in origin. Chile grew in South America. We have made Chile our own. Are you with me? Similarly, you look at Japanese culture in industry, just in quality. These are all Indian import. A lot of stuff from India has gone to make Japan what it is. Today, Karma Yoga is practiced more in Japan than it is done in our own country. At least 5 days a week. After that, you cannot do Japanese a week. But the fact is that it is possible to see the dynamics of economy, not as a linear thing that you are suggesting. It is a dynamic interplay of systems, processes, cultures, and on top of that, innovation. So it's constantly churning. India is going to be. I saw Pondicherry in one format a few years back. Now I'm saying garbage everywhere on the street. Is this one of the best cities of India? I know. What have you done to your own city? Who's responsible? We all are, because we haven't lived up to our billing as a citizen of India. We only made money. You've taken our salaries and you think that's the end of our job as citizen. And we would blame this country, we blame our culture, we blame our leadership, we blame every damn thing except ourselves. I saw somebody who was saying, why would people want to come? Everybody wants to come on a Friday, damn it. Can't they stagger it? You also have come out on a Friday. Do you see this? You've added to the problem instead of finding a solution. I'm saying this with utmost sincerity, not to humiliate or put anyone on the spot. We haven't taken a piece of the solution saying, okay, on me, depends on shifting India's culture. In my organization, I don't care what others do. Ekla chalo nahi. I have to do it. If you can't do it, if you can't even attempt to do it, then you're not proton or electron, you're a moron. Even without realizing it. Sorry to be that dramatic, but sometimes it helps.
Can we take
Yes, sure.
2 more questions? Yeah, so 2 more questions.
Sir, please. Okay, one here and one there. Okay, go ahead.
And you take one in.
My name is Satyakam. I lived in 20 years in Madagascar, 35 years in India, and 13 years in Orovik.
Right.
When you speak about globalization, I have actually several questions, but maybe they are all interlinked. When we speak about globalization, is it for building a better humanity? This is the first question. The second question, because it is linked with what you said about internet, but the internet is also a tool for propaganda, so it's also a danger. The other point is that we speak about globalization, but at the same time there is a rise of religions, fanatism of either it is Christian, Muslims,
Right.
Judaism, or Hindu also up to some extent today. Where it will lead.
Right.
Thank you.
No, the questions that you all valid questions. Globalization doesn't mean positive. Leadership doesn't mean good leadership. It can be bad leadership. Right? Leadership can be bad and good. Globalization can be bad and good. Depends on how you're unleashing, how you're using the forces at your disposal, technological or otherwise. Are you helping this world evolve, or are you bringing this to the edge of disaster? Now, this is an option that you have. This is always a choice that a human being has. I have never said that globalization is always a positive thing. I'm saying some good ideas, if they are globalized, they will serve humanity. For instance, when I wrote the report for the Indian Prime Minister, I said, look, India is not just about being best in the world. We have to be best for the world as well. Because we have a global role. Somebody asked me, how can I globalize Indian thought sitting in Kundamangalam in Kerala in an IIM? I said, look, 1/6 of humanity. 300,000 people take the CAT exam, 400 make it. So in terms of intellect, we are getting the best of the intellect, 0.001% of the intellect of the country. And I am 1/6 of humanity. If I can't globalize Indian thought, who the hell can? I mean, what I am globalizing is another issue. So if I have some good ideas, and if the ideas are relevant to most countries in the world as I can see it, why would I not? Why is yoga a $65 billion industry? Because there is some benefit for everybody. $65 billion don't come from India. Most of it comes from outside of India. Why is the guru the India's biggest export, not an Indian product? You go to Milan in Italy, you go to, the Fashion Street in Japan, you go to New York, not a single Indian product. What a shame. Not one Indian product in the global space. But ideas have gotten global. Indian ideas have gotten global. Yoga is an idea. That is not. And so the point is that our best chance is to see what we get from the West, the best of the Western practices we Indianize them. We don't have to imitate, we can Indianize those practices. America learned quality from Japan because they started teaching quality to Japan and learned from Japan. Because Japanese cars are outwitting Americans. Now today, you know what Japan is saying? That you must work less, please don't work so much. People are divorcing at the age of 60 after retirement. Children are not getting married. People committing suicide in those forests. So the social price that Japan has paid for its huge rise in economy is something that they have to now correct. There's no other way. So globalization of good ideas, the best ideas. Let the best idea win. Let the best idea, let 1,000 flowers bloom, but let the best idea win. Let's see whose idea is the best. When Gandhi and Hitler fought, Gandhi was asked this question, what will happen if there was a fight between the two? Gandhi said, I'll be killed because he's much more powerful than me. Then he said, but the ideals which I am trying to propagate, however imperfectly, those ideals will win. Because his ideals are not Gandhi's ideals. They come from a much bigger tradition. Gandhi in his own way tried experimenting with it. But he created an impact in the world. Gandhi produced a Martin Luther King Jr. He produced a Nelson Mandela, Les Wallace and Holland in Poland, in Burma, Ansiki in Burma. And so you can see the impact of that. The impact of a Vivekananda, many years after his work. Impact of an Aurobindo. Subtle but slow and deep. So these are great ideas which have a chance to be real through practices, through methods, through processes, through procedures. This will happen, it's a matter of time. We use Roman ideas, Greek ideas even today. And why would an Indian idea not survive 1,000 years? I have no reason to believe it will not. Or Chinese idea for that matter, why will it not? If it's a good idea, good for the world, why will it not? Doesn't matter which geography it comes from. The consciousness is geography agnostic, but you have to understand, from this soil, this experiment has happened. So you can't take away your knowledge and not, you take haldi and patent it in America, take neem and patent it. You don't include, you have to include this origin from where this idea is emerged. I'm sorry, but it's a long answer and short question, but I feel very passionate about it. Yeah.
So maybe one more question.
Yeah, there was a gentleman here. Yeah.
Hello, good evening. My name is Gauri Shankar. I worked for 2 decades in industry, and then the last another 2 decades in general administration in an organization.
Okay.
My question is, with the advent of the internet, we are constantly bombarded with statistics. As they say, statistics are like bikinis, what they show is important, what they hide is vital. And there are several kinds of statistics that you see these days. But the ultimate statistics, as far as the human being is concerned, is something which we have started hearing for past decade or so. Probably it existed earlier, I didn't know. That's happiness index. So do you think that today in the world, which I may not be aware of, that an economic index which is getting the main publicity, or that becomes the main factor on which societies are judged, can also factor in the happiness index, and together there could be another index which can be formed which shows it's not only enough to grow economically, but it's also important to be happy.
Yeah, important question. Very important. See, look at Amartya Sen and Singlet. This is called the Singlet Index. They said up to a certain amount of, if you do not earn up to $20,000 or $40,000, I don't remember the exact figure, you are unhappy. Economically not achieving that, you are unhappy. But beyond that, you don't get happier anymore. So there's a threshold which if you don't cross, you still remain unhappy. But beyond that, you don't, just because you have more doesn't mean that you will be happier. So happiness has no direct correlation with material prosperity. I'm going to tell you a story, my first visit to America. This was a very eclectic audience in Boston, and I asked a question, what does half-boiled egg mean to you? And the answer was very prompt, not prompt, a little after reflection, very sharp answer. They said, why an egg boiled for half the time? I said, no. In case of my own experience, it is an egg boiled, a fully boiled egg, cut in two halves by a string by my mother. So the two brothers could share it for tiffin. And it begged the question from the audience. The question is, there are two equations in life where economics is involved. The first question is, how much more do you need to be happy? And the second question, equally important, is how much less can you have and still be equally happy? Nobody addresses the second question in the corporate world. You know, the American Bank of America CEO said anything more, one of their CEOs, founding CEO, Bank of America, true blue American, he said anything more than $1 million in my bank account, I'm going to give it away. I'm not going to keep any more, not a dollar more. For him, that was enough. There was another person called J.R.D. Tata who, when he died, people figured out that he was living in a rented house. He didn't own his own house. I mean, a man who owned half of India. So this person knew, these people knew how to draw a line. Now one of the famous novelists, I think everybody has read his book, but he was in a party in the evening just like we are. And he met a business person. And the business person said, look, how much money have you made to your best-selling novel which has sold 18 million or thereabout copies? He said, X amount of money. He said, that's the kind of money my business makes in a single day. I have a lot more than you have. He said, but there's one thing you don't have, which I have. What is that one thing? I have enough. I have enough. Right? In Harvard, we were asked to answer this question, how much is enough for you? And it was very difficult to find an answer. Nothing was enough. Very difficult to say, this is enough. So you have to draw a line. It has to be a conscious choice. It has to be a well thought out conscious choice, because you are responsible for the larger world. That's your responsibility, not just your own company. And I'll finally end this with a story of an IIT gold medalist. This man decided to be a monk. And in a reunion party, he met one of his batchmates who had made a lot of money in the startup business. And he said, look, you are the topper in my class, gold medalist from IIT. Why did you decide to be a monk all of a sudden? God knows, you could have done so much, you could have created so much wealth for the country. He said, no, that was a conscious choice I made. He said, look, let's do this, let's have a conversation. I own a little island off Mumbai, so let's take a boat, we'll go there, we'll spend the evening in the island. He said, okay, let's go. So we went there, the boatman had stopped business for the night. He said, sir, my day is over, I want to get a meal and a drink, so I'm not going. He said, but you know, this is just no, I'm not going. And then he took out a bunch of currency notes and said, will that make you go? The boatman said, of course, sir, with so much money, who will not want to go? See? And so the businessman turned to the monk and he said, look, money really works. Money really works. And the monk said, I agree with you. Money works. But it works only when you let go of it. It doesn't work when you are holding on to it. Got my point? Thank you for asking that question. Very important question.
It's wonderful. One last question, if I can ask, your association with Sri Aurobindo. Because this is the land of Rishi Sri Aurobindo. And I know some very interesting stories that you told us about your first encounter with him. It would be nice to tell it here.
Yeah, since you're asking me, these are very personal things, but I would still share with this obviously because you belong to the city. You know, this was my inflection point whether I would stay back. I went as a Fulbright scholar in MIT, and then subsequently I went for another Fulbright scholar at Harvard Kennedy School. This was MIT experience, and I am toying with the idea whether to stay back in the US to do a PhD in one of these two Ivy League schools or to come back to India. This is my dilemma. I'm just wondering what to do with this dilemma. And so that day I had to take a flight from Boston to Minnesota, and I'm climbing downhill, Beacon Hill, downtown Boston, and I'm not comfortable walking on snow, so I keep my 2 bags on uphill, and then I come down myself. I see a taxi just go past me. 2 girls run behind, and they say we call him first, and they take the taxi. I'm getting late for my plane, so I'm beginning to wonder if another taxi will show up. So this time a taxi shows up, cab shows up, and the driver says, "Where are your bags?" I said, "It's uphill, I couldn't carry it down." He said, "I'll help you." She goes up, brings those bags down, and as he's driving, he says, "I'm an Italian cab driver. I haven't done any formal education after school, but I have a question to you. You must be an Indian." I said, "Yeah, I'm an Indian. Have you heard of Sri Aurobindo?" "Of course I have heard of Sri Aurobindo. How come you have heard of him? He lived several thousand years ahead of us." And I wanted to engage him more, but we had reached the airport almost. I turned around to see if he was still there, just to thank him. He had vanished. And it had changed my perspective forever. I said, "Will I live?" And later on somebody in England enforced this logic, and he said, "Look, you are in a country which is growing at 1%, 2% per year, and you're going to a country which is growing at 6, 7%. Where are you going to grow faster?" And he said, "There are many people like you in Harvard, MIT, but there are fewer of them in India. So you must go back to India, and that's where your growth would be." And he was not wrong. He was not wrong. So all I'm saying is that some decisions in life happen not because of the way you are thinking, but because some other thought hits you, conventional thought, and you start something as an inflection point in life. This was my inflection point. I thought one story should be enough. There are others, but I'm not.
You know, this is so wonderful, and if you allow to round up, I would be, if you permit me, I would like to read a few lines from Sri Aurobindo, because they are apt for this evening's few lines, but just to round up, he's covered qualities of leadership, and he also talked about things which are, he talked about JRD and Jack Welch. Both of them I had a chance to interact with quite extensively, including Jack Welch. But I have forgotten Jack Welch, I have not forgotten JRD, because when I was working for Tata's, he took us in front of a large audience, and he was to give a talk. And generally they talk about utpadhan, team spirit, profitability, with less wastage and all. He did not talk about all that. He talked about the importance of a smile for 45 minutes. And so the cultural aspect, which is so important, which I wanted to ask you, has been asked, and you gave it such a beautiful answer. These lines are from Sri Aurobindo Savitri, and which touch on almost every aspect that you have talked today. It says, its stark conventions met the flame of a soul. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. Professor Debashis Chatterjee is all about transformation, change, positive transformation. Thank you so much.